Welcome to Conversations with Kit and Alex. Today we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. Should be a good one. So my name is Alex Neal. I'm a certified high performance and mindset coach, and I work with high achieving women who really want to have it all but feel stressed out and burnt out. And I help them to really reintegrate work and life together so that they can experience more joy, more aliveness, so they can earn more.
Love that. That is so important. And I'm Kit Cassingham, longevity coach at Live in Focused Energy. Age is a mindset. And I help people over 40 explore their mindset so that they can generate the energy and desire to live their best life. It's not how long you live, it's how well you live. And how well you live is influenced by why you do what you do. So, in addition to helping you explore your mindset, I will help you discover and activate your why and your purpose.
Nice. Love it. Every time you give your introduction, it makes me feel like it reminds me of it's not the years, it's the mileage. So let's try to rack up those miles instead of the years.
Yeah, and make them adventurous miles.
That's right. That's right. So today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. Definitely something that I've suffered from. I would be surprised to hear that nobody has.
Right.
Kit, what has your experience been with imposter syndrome?
I had never heard the phrase until about 2003, 2002, December of 2002. A new mastermind I was in was meeting, and one of the women in the group said, "I feel like such an imposter. I don't belong in this group." And she was as capable as any other entrepreneur in the room. And I was kind of sit back on my heels with that concept that a successful person could feel
Mm,
like an imposter in a room with other professionals.
yeah.
So
It's interesting. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, so what I have learned from that is that imposter syndrome is, in her case, it's insecurity about yourself. Um, it can show humility, but it can also show um, arrogance and superiority. You're covering for your imposterness with your arrogance or superiority. I don't know,
I've
but I
seen
do so
more
much.
of that, I've seen, I think, more of the arrogance piece than I have the
Yeah,
humility piece.
and so one of my flaws, it can be a flaw, is for me it becomes the humility. So we're talking, and I know the subject real well. I'll say, well, I think this is the way it is, or what the fact is, or whatever. And that's me being humble, or that I don't know everything. So that could be insecurity, but also is trying to underplay and give the other person an opportunity to shine.
Right.
But I come across as not knowing what I'm doing.
Mm, mm. I can see that. It's interesting to hear you talk about the experience that you had with that successful woman because I haven't really, until a few years ago, I didn't know about this whole imposter syndrome thing. But what I found myself saying, especially when I was transitioning from corporate into coaching, was feeling like a fraud. And I think that those two are very similar in that you feel like you don't quite belong. You feel like because it's new territory, maybe that you're venturing into, that you don't, why would people listen to you? Why would you be able to contribute anything because it's not necessarily your quote unquote field of expertise, right? And it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of and a lot of growth to be able to kind of work through some of those feelings.
points. And growth is a real important factor
Mm,
that I think we're going to talk a lot about today.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, imposter and fraud are synonyms to me. So,
Yeah,
and and fraud is not always insecurity, but in this topic, yeah, I
yeah,
think it
in this
is.
case, for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
So do you have, do you remember a time when you had that feeling of imposter syndrome or that feeling of fraud?
I don't think I have ever felt like a fraud
Okay.
in my career. Um, I have felt insecure many times.
Okay.
So I felt like an imposter. I don't know that I have felt like an imposter. Um, I morphed my career enough. So, I mean, I just kind of keep tweaking. I feel like
Mm,
a water sprinkler that with my attention.
mm,
But for me, the center point stays the same. I'm just looking for the right words and target to attract to that center point, which is feeling an energized, vibrant
mm.
life. Um, but so sometimes I feel like an imposter. When I was hanging out with the scientists and doctors researching longevity, I was an imposter in the sense that I don't have that science background.
Mm.
I love hearing what you're doing and applying it, but I can't do that,
Yeah.
which is, I think, was the launch pad for me to move over to the longevity from an ageism perspective. That I can talk about. I can report what they are saying
Mm.
to help people, but I don't feel like I'm out of my league where I am now, as opposed to when I was trying to do longevity from a science perspective.
And doing that brings a different element, right? Because what you're doing is you're looking at what the scientists are doing and you're making it bite size and understandable for the masses. And that's where your expertise comes in.
Right. And I'm making it accessible to everybody.
Yeah,
What the scientists are doing right now is only accessible to people with a lot of money. Steve Jobs was able to didn't he do a pancreatic transplant in
I don't
hopes to
know.
live? He did some surgery that few people could afford.
Mm,
Didn't work, but um, so all of these um, medicines and tests and things that you can do if you follow the scientists, if you have free access to the tests, great. If you have lots of money, you can do this stuff. For example, there's a doctor in Dallas. I don't know how, I want to say he charges $100,000 to for multi-year. I mean, you just come in and you get the he investigates what's going on with your body and gives you steps to take to improve your longevity.
what is he, a functional
He,
medicine doctor?
I'm a longevity doctor function.
Okay,
I don't know
okay,
if I don't know if he's doing functional medicine, but
okay.
longevity is definitely his gig. Very
Interesting.
knowledgeable man, really good. How many people could spend even $10,000
Yeah,
for
yeah.
one thing? I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people who have to, but insurance will often pay for these expensive things.
Mm,
This experimental medicine doesn't cover, insurance doesn't cover. So that's part of the reason I stepped back from that group, because I wanted to help people with from where they are. What little things can they do, which is kind of what you said. It's the little things. And I don't feel like an imposter when I share that, because then
yeah.
I can talk to people one on one like you and I are doing and say, okay, I hear what you're saying. What else could you do?
Mm,
You know, how can you rephrase that, rethink that?
mm, yeah.
So I guess I've felt like an imposter. And when I felt like that, I go, time for me to refocus and come at it from a
Mm,
different angle.
mm.
The intention's the same, but I'm better in my field.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so for me, there's a difference between feeling like an imposter and looking like an imposter.
Mm,
Feeling like an imposter is, yeah, I can talk like a doctor and a scientist. That's if I feel like that, I get, then I need to get more humble. But if I go on stage and not talk like that, then I look like an imposter.
mm. Interesting
So
distinction.
that's where the superiority thing comes in. And I've never gone on stage pretending to be a doctor.
Glad to hear that.
I didn't even do it on TV.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, I think for me, I did when I first started coaching, I definitely felt like I was in that whole imposter thing because it was something that was completely new to me. I did not know that when I first started that that was even a career. I didn't know that you could be a coach. I'd had mentors, I'd had people who supported me at work and things like that. I had a coach, but I never envisioned that one day I would be a coach. And when I started reaching out to people to say, hey, I'm doing this new thing, I was like, why would anybody listen to what I have to say? Right? Because I don't I I don't have experience. I've been trained, but I haven't quote unquote officially coached people.
Okay.
So I know what to do, but I don't have any practical examples. And
So
that
you were
comes with
feeling
time.
right. And because you were learning new things, new
Yeah.
tools, that's what led you to feel like that imposter. And the irony is, you did know a lot. You just were coming at it from a different framework
One of you. Yeah.
as a coach because you have massive experience that you can apply. You just had to learn how to coach that.
Yeah.
And that's where you were feeling insecure, I bet. I mean,
Yeah.
I did too.
No, definitely. And I think there's also a comparison element to that. So I was looking at the other coaches around me. You check people out on social media, you see what everybody's doing, and everybody seems to be this like superhero coach, right? And you're like, I'm coming in, I'm new, and I'm like, hello, right? And
Well,
it's,
and
you can't,
you
go
hear
ahead.
them talk about all of their clients and all of these sessions and
Yeah,
all these things they've done, um, which may not have been true. That may have been that superiority thing going on.
maybe.
I've got to bluster my way through this, but it intimidated you to listen to all that. I mean, I know it did
Yeah.
me too. Yeah.
Definitely, because it makes you feel like, who am I compared to these people? And that's where the imposter, that's where that feeling of fraud, being a fraud comes in, because it's like you feel like you don't have a leg to stand on. But you're right when you say, I had all of this other experience. I mean, I spent 30 years in corporate, right? There's value there. And it's just a matter of, how do I use that experience in a way that supports my clients? Because I understand where they're coming from. I understand the things that they're dealing with. And because of that, I can guide them better than somebody who's never worked in corporate and who could be an excellent coach, but they don't have that background or that experience.
Right. Right. I mean, you and I both have experienced the drain from hustle,
Mhm.
but yours has been hustle in the corporate world, and mine's been hustle in the entrepreneurial world, where I'm rejecting some of the things I see because it makes me feel tired looking at people who hustle.
And you know what I realized as I'm talking about, you know, the anti-hustle coach, right?
Mm.
Is my name. And I spent a lot of time last year hustling,
Even you.
even me. And it takes time to just take a step back and say, you got to practice what you preach, right?
Bingo. Yeah.
Because if I don't put myself through the acid test, how can I support other women in doing that? And how can I come across authentically if, I'm saying on this side of my mouth, I'm saying one thing, and on that side of my mouth, I'm saying something else?
Yeah. And I'm having lessons kind of along that line. For years, I've said to people, you need to eat well, and you need to move, and you need this. And the move we just finished doing, kind of still in the middle of it, but getting out of our house, selling everything we own in, in a matter of a few months was exhausting.
I bet.
And all of my healthy habits dropped away. I've gained a ton of weight. And I'm saying to myself, you need to move more. You need to eat well. I need to lose that weight.
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, kid, this has been a good lesson. You understand why people struggle with getting movement into their everyday life, eating well and not being tempted by that one more slice of pizza or one more piece of chocolate or whatever.
Mm. Well, if it
And
makes you
so I'm
feel
going,
any better, just so you know, I can't see on camera that you've gained weight.
I hide
So
it
you're
all
good.
here down. Thank you. So I'm setting impossible goals for myself right now, big goals. I want to lose, and probably saying TMI in public. Um, I want to lose 30 to 35 pounds in the next few months. What an impossible goal that is. But maybe not. And I'll
Do
feel
that.
like an imposter, but I've got to try.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the clothes that I have with me won't fit. And
And you're
I'll
going to be
find
in
new
a
clothes.
much smaller place with a much smaller footprint. So you got to make sure that you're good to go.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, but setting impossible goals is good for us. I think that's part of our vibrancy in life is having something to shoot for. And it doesn't matter if we make it or not. We get closer to our goal, I believe, by setting big ones than if we set little short ones that are easy to achieve. So we're setting ourselves up to be imposters for a bit.
I agree with you. I think that what makes me feel a little is the word impossible. Because if the way my mind works, if I'm setting an impossible goal, then I'm setting myself up for failure. So I want to set myself up for some goals that are going to be challenging, no doubt. But
Hard, yeah.
in my verbiage, I can't make it an impossible goal because then I won't even try.
Yes. And some of that's a mind shift.
Yeah,
When President Kennedy said, we're going to the moon by the end of the by the end of this decade, that seemed impossible. We had nothing except the
mm,
goal,
mm.
the dream. And so when we say, well, and in Cinderella, they say impossible things are happening every day. Do you know that song from
No,
Cinderella? Oh, we need to sit and watch Cinderella together.
I haven't
The
watched it
fairy
in
god,
forever.
the fairy godmother sings, impossible things are happening every day.
Ah, okay. Okay.
She was wearing a pretty pink dress when she sang it.
And Cinderella
So
was wearing glass slippers, which is not going to happen to either one of us.
no, no. But the concept of how you so see this is where I get into my mindset stuff. You can look at impossible as a challenge or a defeat.
Yeah,
So if
true.
and if the word impossible makes you go, oh, then don't use that one. Use hard or
Yeah,
challenging.
yeah,
But I like the challenge of going, nothing's impossible if I set my mind to it.
yeah. No,
That's the
and I get it. I totally get it. I think it goes back to what you and I have talked about a few times, I think, in the discussions that we've had, which is you have to find what works for you, right? An impossible goal might be just what you need. For me, it's more, I need something that's going to challenge me, but impossible feels too impossible,
Right.
right?
Well, and another example of how we react to impossible. When I've said to people, I'm going to live to be 150, some have said, oh, that's impossible. Nobody's ever done it. And my response is, just because nobody's ever done it doesn't mean it's impossible. It
Yeah,
just means it hasn't happened yet.
yeah. Just when people
Um,
say that to you, just say 4-minute mile.
I do. I actually do. Nobody can run a mile in 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Oh, yeah, yeah. So what are some of the ways that you've used to get beyond this those feelings of imposter syndrome?
Since I've not really felt like an imposter, I haven't used anything. Though maybe that's a cheat answer because I am
Total
very
cheat
much
answer.
into, well, because just say, I don't do it. Yes, I do. Well, but I love to learn. I'm an explorer. And so I just, I'm always learning new things and exploring different angles and trying to apply the new knowledge to what I do, what I want to do. And because am that explorer, I don't see myself as an imposter. I'm not saying I know everything about ageism and longevity. Come to me. I'm saying I've got some ideas, attitudes, and I can challenge us both and push us both to get us further. So it's the explorer in me that maybe that's what keeps me feeling like an imposter
Yeah.
from feeling like an imposter.
And it's interesting because it makes me think of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? Imposter syndrome, the way you're describing it is imposter syndrome is a fixed mindset symptom, whereas
Bingo. Ball's
explorer
over.
is is that growth, more of that growth mindset. It's the exploration, it's the curiosity, it's the learning, it's the integration of the learning into our
Yeah.
everyday life. And
And
that's the,
applying it.
the big difference. Yeah.
And so if we're doing that, if we're applying it and testing it and then going out and exploring some more, how can we feel like imposters? I mean, Edison made 100,000 mistakes creating the light bulb.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he just said, okay, there's one more way that doesn't work.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if he'd felt like an imposter, I guess he would have given up before we had light bulbs.
Mm.
Somebody else would have done it, but
Yeah. And I just something popped into my head, and I can't think of what it is now. I hate it when that happens. Anyways, we'll come back. If it comes back, it comes back.
all right. So I'm going to flip the question on you. What do you do when you're feeling like an imposter to change that?
So I think a couple of different things that I've done in the past that have worked. And one is, I talked about comparison before, is stop comparing. Because I have, to quote Liam Neeson, I have a unique set of skills, right? That nobody else has.
Is
My background.
Liam Liam
Yeah,
says that?
in his movies, like Taken and things like that, he's like, I have a unique set of skills. I will find you and I will kill you. Something along those lines. Anyways, so now I lost my train of thought again.
Oh,
No,
sorry,
so
sorry.
skills. No, that's okay. So I bring things to the table that other people can't bring to the table, just like other people bring things that I can't, right? So remembering what my sweet spot is, what my zone of genius is, so that I can stay there. And then I don't feel like an imposter because I'm in my element. I'm in what feels, what feels right. And the other thing that I notice that I do is I tend to lean on the perfectionist side. And I try to get things to be perfect so I don't feel so much like an imposter, because if it's perfect, right, nobody can shoot
Question you.
arrows through it, right?
Right. They can't
So
question you if you're perfect. Yeah.
practicing things being done and getting them out there instead of them being perfect. And that's super uncomfortable for me because I come from a family where like perfection is not expected, but it's a little bit part of our DNA, right? And not looking for things to be perfect, but looking for things to be good enough to serve and good enough to help has made a big difference.
I like it. The perfectionism is the bar that's been set in your family.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's an impossible standard, right?
In my perspective, yeah. And perfectionism isn't something I suffer through.
And I don't remember who said this, if it was Brandon or if it was Tony who said, um, perfectionism is the lowest standard because it's an unachievable standard, because you can never please everyone. Nothing can ever be perfect because everybody comes at something from a different point of view. And if it's perfect for one, it's completely imperfect for another.
And I think of perfectionism often as a reason to not get started or complete something. It's an escape technique, an avoidance technique.
It's a hiding technique.
Yeah, I find
So,
ways to hide.
yeah.
Perfectionism is not where I go hiding.
Yeah. Oh, and so those are the things that really I try to do is just remember what my zone of genius is and remember that done is better than perfect.
I like it. And does that keep you feeling like from feeling like an imposter when you accept that and just go forward?
Very much so. It's not that, you know, if I'm doing something new or if I'm trying something new, if I'm talking to new people, broaching a new topic, I might feel like that, but I also don't let it stop me in my tracks. It's I'll give you an example. I'm having issues with the tooth, right? And to get that fixed, I'm going to have to go through a lot of pain. And the only way that I can get to the other side is to go through the pain. And this is very much the same thing. To get past it, you have to get through it. There's no way around it. There's no way over it, under it. You got to go through it. And what you get on the other side of that is the reward.
Relief. Yeah. It reminds me of an ambulance call I did many years ago. A woman fell off her horse, fortunately into a big pile of snow, bank of snow, and she wrenched her knee,
Mm.
dislocated it. And we offered, when the paramedic got there, she offered to pop it back in for her. No, 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 it'll hurt. So this poor woman, we packaged her up and stabilized her knee and leg as best we could. But she went and see, well, it was 20 minutes down bumpy road and then on the highway to the hospital. And she wouldn't let the doctor relocate her knee. And I don't remember what
Well, what did
happened.
she
I don't
expect was
know.
going to happen?
I don't know. But I don't know if the nurse tricked her into it, but just readjusted it, and the woman screamed, and she goes, "Oh, it's not so bad." She went shopping, and she could have gotten back on her horse an hour earlier. Just let us deal with
Yeah.
it. And she was in an immense amount of pain, as I'm guessing you are with your tooth, because it's still there.
Yeah, it's still there. It's okay. It'll get
So,
fixed.
but you're letting the doctor fix it as opposed to
Yes.
resisting it.
Yes.
So that,
Yeah.
bravo.
Otherwise, I'm taking a hammer and I'm going to town because I can't continue to live with my tooth like that. It's not going to
Right,
work.
right.
So,
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
mm-mm, mm-mm.
Let's see. So, do you explore your world a lot, both professionally and personally? Are you always learning new things, or
I, I go
do you
through
tend to stay
phases. I go
right?
through phases of intense learning and and then I take a break. And then I go back and then I take a break because I find that works for me, especially if I'm at a point where if I have to get to the next level with whatever it is, if it's a new project, a new task, a new whatever, um, I have to give it everything I have, and then I got to integrate the learnings and everything else, and then I can, continue to move on. Um, so that works well. And there have also been times where, like, when I learn a new language, I'm going back to learn German, but that's for me for my own pleasure. And that I like to do and stay on top of because otherwise I lose the learnings
You have to,
that I
right?
did,
That kind of
right?
learning takes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
constantly.
So it's I think for the big things, I go in spurts. For the fun stuff, I kind of just, go with the flow.
If you're learning a music instrument or a new piece, that would take the same attention as
Yeah,
learning a language. Yeah.
yeah. How about you?
I forget to stop and pause with my learning. I might, right now I'm reading a book called The Quantum Body, which is
Oh, I've heard
way,
about that book.
it's fascinating. Deepak Chopra wrote it with two other scientists. It's fascinating. And I see what quantum energy and fields are about, but I can't quite get my head around it.
Hmm.
So I'm having a great time learning it. And then I'll go back to reading about ageism. And one of these days I'll pick up a novel and read it. But so I just always learn. And I think at the back of my head, my brain, I'm processing and applying it.
Mm,
I, I suspect I would feel better and do better if I would finish this book and sit and contemplate it a bit
yeah,
and dabble with how can I apply this to my coaching or to my life before I move on. But
yeah, yeah,
I am always learning
yeah.
new things, both in my personal life, in my business life, around my world, even. So
Yeah, I would say also one of the things that works well for me is reading. I love to read. And
what do you read?
I read, so my favorite, if I'm reading for pleasure, is anything that's like a murder mystery, a thriller, things like, Jeffrey Deaver, James Patterson, those kinds of things. But I have a huge collection of health books because health for me has always been, it's like the holy grail for me. Like
Okay.
I want to crack this nut and I haven't been able to yet, right? But then I read a lot about personal development and productivity and, all these other things just because the topics I think are super interesting and they help me in my day to day and they help me to bring different things to my clients when they're stuck.
Exactly. So you and I do the same thing with the reading, different things, knowing it helps us.
Mm,
and then helps us help our clients.
yeah,
Makes us more well-rounded and
mm,
broader and sometimes deeper too. And it's
yeah.
that combination of broad and some, not everything has to be done with depth.
Sure.
When I was a computer programmer, one of the guys in my office said, you know, Kit, problem with you, you're a generalist. You need to learn to be a specialist. That's when you'll succeed.
Mm,
And I thought, okay, I guess I won't succeed by your standards. And now I'm hearing the experts, the gurus say, you want to be a generalist, knowing a broad, when you learn about productivity, somehow that's going to give you answers to health issues.
mm,
I think it fits in.
yeah. And I think there's a little bit of both, right? I think when whether you go wide or you go deep, when we get to a point where we feel we have good working knowledge of a topic, that also helps to not suffer from that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? Because if you know enough, you can talk about it intelligently, you can support other people who might be going through something similar, then you feel more like an authority versus feeling like an imposter.
Yeah. And mastery, you know, going deep is
Mm,
the what in my YOS. And when I learn things, I don't become an expert, but I learn enough, go deep enough that I can be proficient in what I'm doing. When I walk the Camino, and I know I've told you this before, I
mm,
learned as much as I could about things. And then I became a resource for other pilgrims who hadn't learned that much. I mean, living in the mountains as I did gave me an expertise of how to approach the mountains and know that you can't trust them. It's sunny right now, but it's going to
mm,
snow in a
mm.
minute.
Yeah.
And one of the women I knew let that trick her. She was in the mountains, it was gorgeous, and she was going to send all of her woolens home. And, no, don't. It's going to get cold and rainy soon. She sent them home. It got cold and rainy. She had to buy more clothes.
Uh,
Um, and she lives in a part of the country that she doesn't wear wolves. So now she has 3 or 4 sets of them. So there's that depth that
mm,
helps me survive that particular thing.
yeah.
And in productivity, you probably go deep because that productivity really fits in with your kind of your approach to coaching,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah. It does.
And I'll bet you know a lot more about productivity than I do because I think you study it more,
Maybe.
read about it more.
Maybe.
And
Yeah.
that's not a comparison, it's just an awareness of our different angles.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Comparing would take a totally different, would be a completely different feeling.
Yeah, yeah, it would. And so when I want to learn more about productivity, I come to you. Say,
There you go.
well, and I came up with my own approach to productivity because Brendan's approach is too rigid for my personality
Mm,
style.
mm.
So I took all the different approaches and put them together and spun it around and came up with my own. I
There you
call
go.
it a fluid schedule.
Yeah.
So so
Cool.
if I tried to do productivity the way Brendan teaches us, I would feel like an imposter because it's not true to my style
Congruent.
and heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, incongruent is what it would be. So, oh, that's something we hadn't talked about before.
Explored incongruency. But yeah.
Well, even as we talked about the imposter syndrome, we didn't talk about the congruency that can come in and out of our lives.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All
Let's
right.
see.
Anything else? Do you want to tackle
Yeah,
incongruency or congruency or
right now, nah.
okay, we can keep it for another day.
Yeah, yeah. We've dabbled and gone off on enough tangents, but it all comes back to this uh, imposter syndrome anyway.
Yeah. Hmm.
Mm,
So,
interesting.
words of advice to anyone who's feeling like they're in the grips of imposter syndrome. I know what I would say.
You start. Let me see what comes back to me.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. One, don't compare yourself to other people. Stay in your zone of genius. Know that what you bring to the table. And again, done is better than perfect. Get it out there. Don't sweat it too long and just get it to a point where sometimes things are just good enough.
Okay. So I'm going to go with the honor your desire and tendency to explore, to learn new things, um, do new things, and be congruent. So, all right, I'm bringing congruency back in, but be congruent with who you are and
Mm.
don't feel like you have to live or work according to somebody else's rules, patterns, recommendations. And honor yourself. Stop once in a while and look back and see how far you've come with what you're doing. And test, do you love what you're doing?
Yeah,
So that's what I'll say.
cool.
I do have a quote that I want to share from um,
Go
one
for
of
it.
my mentors, Jeff Hamui, who's one of the co-founders of the Modern Elder Academy.
Bless you.
He says, growth and regeneration means placing yourself into the discomfort that comes from discovery and the uncertainty of newness. I love that. And that is so Jeff to say that.
I like the uncertainty of newness part.
I don't have any more. Do you?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, then let me offer the audience um, a free chat session to explore to learn more about what it's like to explore your mindset, what it's like to discover your why or activate your purpose, activate your why. So go to my contact page at liveinfocusedenergy.com/contact and pop me a note and tell me when you want to meet and we'll arrange it. So I want to remind you that age is a mindset. And I help people over 40 explore their mindsets and generate the energy and desire to live your best life. And it's not how long you live, it's how well you live. And why you do what you do impacts the quality of your life. So contact me and let's do a little bit of exploring about your mindset and activating your why, discovering and activating your why and purpose. I'm Kit Cassingham with Live in Focused Energy. Call me.
Nice. And what I'm going to offer to the audience is I'm doing a webinar next week on Thursday. I will provide the details so that Kit, you can put them in the show notes, but it'll be next Thursday. And I will be talking about productivity and self-care because I think those two things go very well hand in hand together. And just a reminder, I'm Alex Neal, certified high performance and mindset coach, also known as the anti-hustle coach. And I help high achieving women who want it all but feel stressed out, burnt out, to really reintegrate work and life and so they can experience more joy, more aliveness, so that in turn they can earn more.
Um,
And I think that's going to close it off for this week, for this month.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
And so, all right. Good talking with you again, Alex.
You too. See you next month.
See ya.